We'll cut that in or out, or I may just leave it in because you guys are fun to talk to. So, real quick,
Yeah.
okay, welcome everybody. My name is Matt McNamara. I'm Sterling Says. Sterling was originally the cat, but it's also my middle name. And this is the first time I've done a one of these podcasts slash chats. So I got a couple of my friends together, other awesome coaches who are nice enough to give us a little time. We're trying to keep it short because I'm not a big fan of the 120-minute podcasts with 17 topics and 400 deep dives. So at this point, it's just the three of us, and we'll have another couple buddies on hopefully next week or the week after. Anyway, let me take a quick moment and just introduce you guys. Scott Cole has worked with us at the USA Cycling Talent ID camps and lived in the Bay Area for a while, and now is on the East Coast with a family. Scott, why don't you just do a quick introduction of yourself, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I've been coaching for maybe 18 years now. Started when I was very young. It means I'm always the youngest coach in any groups that I'm hanging out with. But I love doing it, and it lets me live vicariously and work with a lot of amazing athletes who cross all sorts of disciplines. I myself mostly focus on working with road athletes. But one thing I'm interested in talking today about how much those lines are blurred and that like there's not as clear a distinction between road and dirt anymore these days, and everyone's sort of crossing over back and forth now, which I think is really interesting.
Boy, that's for sure. That's for sure. My other guest is John Cheetham, who's also a longtime coach. John's probably in that 20 plus years game. Apologies for the noise behind me. Quiet. I'm on a Zoom call. Uh, that'll probably make it on the podcast. That'll be great. And John also I met through both the USA Cycling Talent IDs, and John was also one of the founding developers or architects. I like the term architects of the beginner race program for USA Cycling. There were five of us that did it, born from the early bird series in Northern California, which is, honest to goodness, I think it's probably one of the best development series in the country because it takes riders from absolute beginners all the way up to racing, P1, 2 races. So there's clinics and then there's racing on the same Saturday or Sundays in January. So both these guys have been around for a long time. I've been coaching since I actually quit my last normal job in 2004, so 22 years. And same thing, did some USA Cycling Talent ID, work with these guys a lot, and we've just, stayed friends, and it's really great. Everyone's always says, oh, what about your competition? And to be honest, I don't really think of any coach as my competition, but these guys in particular, and then Dan Smith and Larry Nolan, they're like our cohort. So we trade texts and so forth. And I really just wanted to get on and have this quick conversation about stuff. John, give me a quick about you.
Oh gosh, let's see. So what am I doing these days? So yep, like both of you, at least a couple decades now. And let's see, what do I do now? Now it's my full-time gig. I was a part-time coach for a long time, well, balanced that kind of regular job. And now for the last 6 years, I've had the bike fit studio that I have that I'm standing in now. So I do about half coaching and half bike fitting now, which is good for me. I like kind of breaking it up, and I like meeting a lot of new people in the bike fitting scene. So that's really fun, and kind of diving into that. And I'm the current head coach of TLMTV, which is a NICA team here in San Rafael in Marin County, which is definitely I get paid in passion, and but it's really rad. So that's a big part of what I do now. And
Well,
yeah.
I think that's a great jumping off point to our first topic. We wanted to start off, so we had a couple of topics that I threw out to these guys on an email. I'm curious, John, especially with all of your involvement with NICA, what do you see as sort of the state of our sport right now, in a mildly condensed version?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see the biggest fields at the USA Nationals in mountain bike and dirt, there are 17 to 18 boys, right? They had to instill more qualifications this year with a qualifying series essentially now with the US Pro
Mhm.
to just kind of pare that down enough to only have 90 kids in the race or 120 kids in the final race. I think there's 180 and 17, 18 boys and but all those parts are, I mean, all those demographics are just exploding. So 15, 16 boys, and the girls are exploding too. So if you really look at the percentages, so you can see what's happening at the grassroots, which expanded even more this year. And in our little local area, I forget how many hours I just heard it the other day, but or how many coaches we have and stuff like that. But it was just tremendous. So yeah, I think it's all pushing up, and you see it. I just got back from Unbound, took
Right.
4 teenage athletes there to Unbound, which was super rad to go there and just their minds were just blown, right? Like I have a 17-year-old that got 23rd overall. So in the 200-mile amateur, not the pro race. Yeah. So they're smashing and they're having a great time and their eyes are just getting opened to a whole bunch of new cool stuff.
How about the East Coast, Scott? What's the lay of the land for you guys a little bit?
I mean, I think it's similar. Like I said a few minutes ago, like this blur with gravel racing really is just changing everything. And I think it's exposing people to both sides of the spectrum between road and dirt. And like people will cross over. And I've had lots of athletes who have always said that they're mountain bikers, but actually they're spending most of their racing time on a gravel bike now, which is, certainly much closer to road racing than they're used to. And then vice versa. People who were like, always build themselves as road racers. And now they find themselves on gravel, and that's a whole spectrum. And then all of a sudden, I feel like it used to be cyclocross was kind of the crossover for a roadie to be on dirt,
Right.
and now it's gravel,
It's
which is like a
gravel.
very different format than cyclocross. And I think that's been very interesting. And a lot of people too, I think with the gravel racing, like Unbound isn't a good example. I see a lot more people doing like destination races now too. You know, like you get your big Unbound and people will travel all over the country. Whereas if you are, let's say, just mostly focusing on road, you're just kind of doing your regional road races.
So it's sort of a leading question, but do you guys think is road dead, dying on its last breath, or is it just gonna sort of be supplanted and kind of have, if cyclocross had second tier status 10 years ago, is road destined for second tier status?
That's a great question. I think there's some interesting things happening with road. So, kind of like what Scott was saying, I have athletes now that, they're mountain bikers and then and sometimes they're crossing all the way over to road, right? And I have people that are like, man, you would be really great at the Catskill Criterium or something like that. And, their physiology is fantastic for it. And I'm like, you should do that race. You should, do this. You should do that. Um, I think it's really interesting what's happening with like the U.S. crit scene. I think that's kind of fun to watch, right?
Super
There's some
fun,
definite
yeah.
there's showmanship happening there that's pretty engaging, right? So that's pretty cool. Um, I don't know. I don't think we're going to see a lot of real road racing in America. I think that's going to go away. I think the permitting costs and the just all the infrastructure costs are so high
Logistics.
now
Yeah.
that I don't think they'll be able to sustain it. And I really think that gravel racing is supplanting that, right? So it's basically now, if you did like the Huffmaster race in Northern California, that's straight up the Leesville Gap road race with just a few more gravel sections, right? So that's
Right.
the old Leesville road race where we would be out there on 25s or 23s
Right.
and
Yeah.
smashing it up through the gravel. And now they're on 50s, right? And they're going way faster and eating a lot more carbs, that's for sure. So
Boy, that's for sure. We'll get to that hopefully in a minute. What about it, Scott? Do you think road's dead?
I think right now it's certainly dying, but I could see it, so much in life is cyclical. As
Right.
Johnny was saying, you've got mountain bikers who, right, maybe they came up through NICA or they just started at mountain biking because it was a fun activity and then they started racing. And so that's why they are a mountain bike racer, is just because it's sometimes a more fun like activity to do. And then they're trying gravel. And if they get really into gravel and they're doing gravel for a couple of years and now they're doing like these long format, like Peloton style races,
Hmm.
and then they may start getting interested in road. And I could see it like kind of being that little bridge of like some of these gravel promoters now actually kind of have figured out, Johnny, as you were saying, how to do the permitting. Like that is the biggest barrier right now. And so they're like, oh, well, I basically already know how to run a road course. So I can kind of do that. Let me try and that offering and see if people jump on it. I could see people moving back towards it. But, I think that might still be 5, 10 plus years away. I think it's kind of like coalescing in the middle right now.
Yeah, I think that, I think crits will be around because fortunately, fingers crossed, it's a pain. I'm sure I've race directed a couple of criteriums. It's a little easier than closing roads, closing a floor block, a couple blocks. But I go back to what you said about destination. I look at something like Tour of the Gila or Tucson Classic and say, stage races could be a good destination road race thing. It's a little intimidating because of stage race. At the same time, going back to John's observation about juniors on mountain bikes, I was in Arkansas. I did most of the nationals last year for the national series with a Colorado elite team that had riders from all over the country, and I think we're 12 or 13 on the roster. But the big show where we go and bear racing's there, and a lot of team dirt or dirt camp racing. And I think Arkansas field last year, I think it was 180, and you get points for top 20 for UCI if it's a UCI race. And so these kids are, you're starting 180th if you don't have any points or you didn't sign up early enough or whatever the criteria is. So I'm curious to see if that mass of people sort of pushes riders into other stuff, because a lot, everyone that gets into it, in my experience, generally loves riding and loves racing if that's their shtick. So to be able to go do a road race or a gravel race where you're not starting 180th on a really tight course, hopefully that carries some crossover appeal. I also think, and I'm curious to see what you guys think. I think the format of, maybe it's a bracket format for some of the NorCal Nationals and stuff, where there's qualifiers instead of one qualifier where 10 guys move on. 180 kids, maybe it's 40 or 60 riders in a field, and 10, 25% move on, versus yeah, unfortunately for you, you're 90th on the field, and it's a great race if you move up 30 spots, right? So what do you guys think about options with big fields? Real quick before you say, I'd say that the grasshopper format I like a lot because they're kind of time segments generally. Some of them are not timed; they're regular races. But that kind of mix and match of formats, I think, has some validity. But what do you guys think? How do we keep the interest and not push riders out because I never see the front, for
Yeah,
example?
I think that there's, that's one of the draws of gravel racing, right? Is that you can kind of be on either side of it, right? You can be on the pointy end of it, if you move up to that level and you can belong there, or you can be like, today I am absolutely I'm a participant, right? I did Grodio last year, which
Cool.
is really fun in the Wasatch, right? And that was just a rad few days, in Envy. And I mean, there was some really fast. Most NB Mod Squad was there, right? They had a time section. That was a pretty low key race, but I mean, I was way off the back, right? I was just like eating hot dogs and fixing my bike and throwing axes at rest stops and doing all kinds of shit. So, I
Nice.
mean, that's a lot of fun too. So you can kind of do whatever and have a great time at it. I personally, just an opinion, I don't really like the Strava time segment races. Um,
Really?
they make me a little crazy, honestly. And I know the promoters need to do it, but yeah, it's not my favorite. I like bike race to be a bike race. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm crabby about it. I don't know. But I like it. I like to because I think about teaching so much, right? And I think
Mm.
about teaching people how to race. And I think it's important for them to understand pack dynamics a little more and
Mm-hmm.
be like,
Mm-hmm.
this happened because of this. And the Strava racing takes a lot of that out, right? And so I don't really care for that as
So
much. But that's just my
before you
opinion.
before you answer, Scott, what's the last thing you towed the line at? The last event that you towed the line at, besides chasing your kids around?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't been on a start line in years.
Yeah,
Since
you need to get
basically
on a
since the
start
kids have
line.
come around. I know.
Street cred
Well,
matters, or dirt cred.
honestly, I'm just starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Where all of a sudden, like it's not a huge burden on my wife. If I'm like, hey, I'm heading out for a long ride today on the weekend, enjoy the kids for the next 4 hours. Now all of a sudden that's becoming so. I see my return to racing coming in the near future, which is exciting.
Yeah, you absolutely get a pass with the young kids, and being a dad and a husband and all that. So we've been there, and you absolutely get a pass. But we're still gonna rib you about it. 'Cause why wouldn't we?
But I mean, the truth is, it's probably going to be gravel, like that's going to be
Yeah.
like the easiest return to, as Johnny was saying, like you can go and smash your face and ride super hard and be like, it's fine that I finished, 75th. I still rode hard and did well. Whereas if I'm just going and doing a road race or a crit and I finished 75, 75th, it's like, okay, what, what's the point of showing up? It's kind of just like a different mentality.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it makes a good pivot too, because I did say, street cred matters, and I think it does. I think, coaches that have a little bit of experience, and you guys obviously do, it brings another level of connection with the riders. And it's a nice pivot, I hope, to sort of what do you guys think of the state of coaching, not specific to AI, but we'll get to that. You can add it into your answer, but what do you see as a state of coaching? What's your primary job and relationship and vision for your athletes? Uh, sorry, that's a wide open question, but what's the state of coaching for you guys? Scott, you go
Yeah.
first because
Oh yeah. Let's have Scott go
sorry,
first.
yeah, Scott's
Yeah, so state of coaching for me these days, one, I should say the bulk of the athletes I'm coaching, I have coached for a very long time. Um, so that has certainly changed, so like what my responsibility in coaching is, like my athletes, and I think in general, because there's so much availability for content out there for athletes to, it's not just that they have to like read Road Magazine and, look at the tips or buy Joe Friel's book. Like there's just a million and one ways for cyclists to easily get their hands on like, oh, what are workouts? What's training? So it's always been about the relationship with the athlete. And I think it is even more so now. And for me, having these athletes that I've worked with for a decade plus, I'm not giving them any workouts they haven't seen before. Like there's no secret sauce. They just need to have that accountability partner. Um, and have that person that they know is kind of looking over their shoulder. And so for me, like I have, that's become a lot more of my coaching, is being sure you're getting your workouts, but like you've seen this same workout from me plenty of times before. You know how it is, you know how it's going to feel. um but you need that accountability partner to make sure you're staying on it and you're giving it your effort, and you're not like kind of letting yourself slack because it's easy and you can just repeat what you did last week. You got to go a little harder.
right. Absolutely. What about you, John?
Yeah, like Scott said, I also have a lot of athletes that I've retained for a long time. I kind of have a portion of them that are in that boat where I'm helping them a lot of times just navigate life and being accountable and helping them pivot and figuring out a lot of times now, like as they're getting older, like health issues and things like that, right? So we're doing a lot of stuff around that, and it is all about relationships for sure. I'd say the things that I am thinking about right now, as far as advancements and things like that, in in the tech area
Mm,
would be metabolic metabolic things, metabolic testing, metabolic modeling,
mm-hmm,
aerodynamic modeling,
mm-hmm,
CFD. Pretty into
mm-hmm,
that now.
mm,
Most of my athletes now get a digital twin. And we're doing stuff with IRO and things like that. So, I've got we have so much stuff that we can kind of, so many resources now, just in the last few years that have really expanded, which is cool. Some of it is just kind of shiny objects and it's kind of like, but, but yeah, that's pretty cool. But then on the other side of it, I think, for me, a big focus in the last couple of years is, in sports psychology, and then really working with athletes on that, on
mm-hmm.
game day or race day, focus, and off the bike too. So,
Any
and I think
secrets on
that's
your?
going to be one of our strengths.
Sorry about
Hmm?
that, bud. Any secrets on the sports psych race day prep?
Um, I think thinking about the difference between being excited and being nervous, and kind of and helping people
Hmm,
understand that it's really the same flush of feelings, and that you're just going to need to take them along for the ride,
right.
is really, really important. I think, I have people that are like, no, I'm nervous and I'm just going to have a bad race, and they just go all sideways. So
Right. Thank you.
getting them to understand that, I'm still nervous. I get on a start line now and I don't race a lot anymore, but I'll maybe race a couple times a year. I mostly do like marathon mountain bikes and stuff like
Mm,
that. If I
nice.
do that kind of stuff now. Um, I still get jacked up, so
Mhm. Scott, any race day advice for a young rider and an experienced rider? What's your race day mentality? I think John, you hit it right on the head with that part. Anything for your side?
I like routines a lot. I
Mm,
think a lot of anxiety comes from feeling like you don't have control. And I think little routines that can even be just as something as small as like where you put your socks in the trunk, like you're changing out of your street socks and you're putting your cycling socks on before. If you like have the same place that you're always going to put them in the same order that you get dressed, or like I always do these five same things at the beginning of every race, it can give you that honestly that artificial sense of control. And I found
mhm.
that helps a lot for people that are facing those pre-race anxieties, just being like, well, I did what I was supposed to do, what I know that I need to do before each race, so great, job is done, now I just have to roll. And that could just be that you have very regimented warm-up routine, very regimented nutrition. Not everybody needs this, but I find for people that like have those anxieties, giving them that artificial control going
Right.
into race morning can help a lot.
Boy, I like both those answers because they're great and different. And I'm just going to add to that on my end that I really try to get my riders to do those things, but also to take some time in their process to detach from everything and just get down by themselves. My favorite is to find a nice tree, lay under it, take your helmet off, lay back, and do some visualization and some relaxation. So that, I'm just putting, if we put these three elements together for our riders, then they're going to go to the start line in a really great mindset. So I think that was a great contribution, guys. Thanks. That was awesome. It does make a nice pivot also to, and John mentioned a little bit, the physiology side and sort of the prep side. And I just want to tag on to John's thing because I know you use Inside, Johnny, and I love it because it gives me the background for the rider to say this is why we're doing what we're doing. And I think zone two, right, is the classic example because a focused zone two ride is not necessarily an easy ride. And putting my riders on 2 or 3 hour zone two rides, there's a challenge to that. Where if I say, okay, I want as little zero pedaling as you can do, and I want as tightly controlled, power to normalize power range so that you're not all over the place. Um, as a stepping stone to doing the harder stuff, and I still struggle, and I'm curious where you guys are at, both on the physiology and what you use, but I still struggle with the idea of the, polarization, 80/20, versus doing a fair bit. And I have to be honest, I use polarization as starting at about sweet spot, starting at about that 90% of threshold. But I also started using MLSS more than FTP. And I always think of FTP as sort of the pointy end of the sword, with MLS being that break point where lactate's crossing over. So for me, I look at that and say, okay, to teach the athlete to have a broad base of awareness, I think that's really good. So anything that you guys do with the physiology side that you find particularly useful or insightful? It's kind of a tough question.
um yeah, I think so for me, my model when I have a new athlete or a young athlete, I start them with FTP. And because that typically is like enough for them to think about at first. And it's also easier to just kind of admin and to
Mm-hmm.
explain a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of my model is like when I take somebody on, especially if you're thinking about like a 15-year-old or something like that,
Right.
she's about
Right.
the youngest that I'll coach, right? Before that, they're just not really mature enough for that level of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, pretty quickly, usually in about the second year when they start to get more serious, I'll move them to more of an MLSS model for sure, right? Because then we're really starting to be able to parse down to their real physiology, right?
The
And I think
individual,
that's
right?
pretty key. I think, I mean, I use it a lot. I use it a lot with the modeling, with the carb max and things like that too.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yep.
that's one of the biggest. biggest things you can do with them now is to not be kind of guessing or not be guessing as much, right? We're still kind of
Hmm.
using a model to be fair.
Hmm.
But guessing at what their glycogen burn rate is at these different intensities and how we can fuel that, things like that.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and have that discussion. Yeah.
What's your methodology, Scott, or your approach? Yes,
I
indeed.
mean, probably not too dissimilar. It's, and as Johnny says, you always start with FTP because that's going to get somebody in the general range. And then I think I feel like it's a little bit more trial and error because I find, different people and based on what their physiology are going to be more or less successful in different sort of energetic zones. And so, I might have one athlete where like, based on their FTP or their MLSS or something like that, I would expect them to, let's say, like this is their expected power output if they're doing like VO2 max, and they may be higher or lower. And at first, I'm just like, oh, good workout or bad workout, something like that. And then after you start to see the pattern, it's like actually no, like they are just hitting like they're just hitting their like those energy systems at a lower power than I would expect, but that's just because that's how their body is wired and how their body is organized. So a little bit more of just sort of like um that using like some of the data to like synthesize in the way that like a human brain is really good at doing is just like seeing some of that pattern matching and
Right.
seeing where that athlete kind of falls in the like empirical real world.
Well, and I think FTP is so ubiquitous, and appreciate Andy and those guys coming up with all that. I think it's pretty valid. What's really interesting is so I'm doing a little you know fundamentals of exercise physiology, some posts on my Substack. Um, like foundationally, like three studies that were done in the 50s to the 80s, the 60s to the 80s. So all those algorithms are based off of the same basic science, from inside to exert to even the FTP model, right? So it's all the same science. It's just the interpretation goes around. Um, and I really like the progression, and I think it sounds like we all do it, where you start with something they're probably already familiar with through just nomenclature and the community. And then you sort of take the individuals, you get to know them. I find it really, really fascinating to see that individuality of riders where, the classic at the same FTP, they're using different systems and stuff. And I think that's been great. The other thing I want to circle back on is the longevity question. And it sounds like we don't have the outlier here because all of us tend to have long-term clients. And I've always had long-term clients. It's been a great gift. But I wonder, if, and I don't know if it's an opinion or an observation, but I don't know many coaches that have a lot of turnover, but statistics say that there is a lot of turnover in coaching. And I don't know what the limiter is or anything about that. I think the relationship is key. Have you guys I personally have not had athletes where, we've had a big break of the relationship or anything. It's mostly just, 6 or 8 or 10 years. Maybe they want to try something new. Or honestly, I turned an athlete away that I coached for probably a decade or 12 years just because how much more can I bring to the table, right? She's super experienced. She has X national championships. I didn't want to be formulaic with her. So do you think there are any hints and tricks for any coaches that might be listening as far as that retention and pitfalls to avoid?
Hmm.
A good question.
I mean, here's what I think. I think, as I said before, and as you mentioned, I think relationship is a huge part of retention. If an athlete is coming to you thinking that they just need you to be prescribing workouts and you're going to be giving them the magic workouts, then pretty soon they're going to realize, ooh, I've done this for a year. I know what all the workouts are. I can just take these and do them on my own. Or I could just go and do, like trainer road workouts or whatever it is. Um, when they have that relationship with you, then they're going to feel like you're more a part of their life. And what I actually just sort of thinking about in real time as we've been talking is, Johnny, you kind of mentioned this too, of uh, regardless of what level, whether they're like an elite athlete or looking to participate, cycling is a part of their life. And I find myself trying to make sure that cycling is a um, productive and contributory part of their life, something like that they want. So long-term athletes ebb and flow, how serious they are about cycling and what's going on with their life. And I kind of see one of my roles as just like ushering them through that so cycling can stay an enjoyable
Mm,
and meaningful part of their life, whether that is
yeah.
because they're still racing elite or like they just had their first kid and they're not racing at all. Great. Like maybe we're not even doing any workouts. Maybe your calendar is all just blank, but you still just need someone that you can talk to every couple weeks or every like month so you feel connected to the sport. And I think when you are part of that foundational part of how cycling relates to the rest of their life, then they just view you as like a partner in their cycling life.
Hmm. Hmm. The
And I
first
think
thing I thought
that'll,
of when you said
you
that
know,
was the Zwift through line, right? I can't go racing, but I can go Zwifting. Or I can go climb up the Zwift, and that's plenty. And maybe we challenge them on that. John, anything to add to what Scott said?
Yeah, I'm exceptionally good at talking people out of working with me. Um, I I when it gets to sometimes when it gets to a point, I mean, I will be like, you'd be better off like lately. I mean, there's some really good like strength providers
Mm,
right now
mhm,
on
mhm,
Training Peaks and stuff where they just do strength, work through Train Heroic, stuff like that. And I pivoted people to that. Like they don't have any time to really train with me. And I've been like, why don't you do this guy's program? Why don't you just do some workouts on your own? Just, you're really jammed up. Just do this. And maybe and pivoting myself or into a position where maybe you come in for bike fits on a regular basis and we check in. So I still have a role there, but it's a
mhm.
lot more limited. And in my judgment, it's a little more of what an athlete might need, right? So then I feel because I don't know, I just don't it's challenging for me if somebody doesn't have workouts, like if they don't have goals of
Goal,
like
right?
event goals, that can be a little challenging for
Yeah,
me.
same.
And I do have athletes that are really, of course, if you're navigating injury and things like that, that's one thing, right? And you have to kind of move through that. I think yeah, but I have also pivoted a lot with athletes, like because I've kind of done everything, like
Right.
all the endurance sports, right? When people are like, "Did you do this? Did you do that?" I kind of did it all, right? So I've got a guy now that's running marathons, right? He qualified for Boston this year, right?
Right.
That was like a 3-year journey. I took him on 15 years ago as like a cyclocross racer or something, or like a
Wow.
road racer in Pennsylvania. And now he's running marathons. Like who would have thunk, right? Two little kids like Scott, right? And he's like runs on his treadmill in his basement a lot, and does a
Yeah.
lot of stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find myself in the last year or so, um, really doing much more individuality, right? I've got a cadre of workouts, hundreds that I've built, but I find that, especially with the athletes that I'm doing the more metabolic stuff with, I almost customize every workout. I may have a template, but to go in and actually modify the erg file, for example, I instead of modifying an erg, I'll build a new one for that athlete. So it's a little more time intensive per athlete, but it keeps that motivation. I work from a goals orientation, right? I love a good project is one of the things I say to almost all my athletes on startup. I love a good project. If your project is to do a century, great. If it's to win a national championship, great. Projects can be anything as long as the athletes bought in. But I find that for me, I don't do a lot. I have some programs on Training Peaks, for example, like pre-built. But I go back and I read them, and every time I read one, I think of something I want to change. So I don't think there's a perfect plan or a perfect workout. And so for me, I look at it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to build this workout, and I kind of wing it and put something out there, and it seems to work pretty well. And I've found success with that with athletes to have that close personal. But here's the segue, two-part. The first is it's time intensive, and so I have less total athletes. I had some attrition last year just through working with the elite team. and not having time to manage some of my coaching athletes. So it's less N number. My N number is pretty small. What used to be, 16 to 20 athletes on my that I was coaching is now more like, 10 to 12 maybe. And I find that that's, that I know that it frees up more time. I probably work more, but that relationship is easier to develop and maintain. And this, oh, I forgot the second one. So a couple so, which is another way to say, I hope this is a jumping off point that we can get the other guys in and maybe make this a quarterly thing or something. Cause I think we all develop and grow and have insights. But I really like the individual side. Quick aside, 20-second opinion on ergometers. Scott, what's your 20-second opinion on the ergometer based workout?
Yeah, gets you riding hard, forces you to ride hard.
John?
I like them. I favor them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'll say that because I came with a preconception. I like them a lot early on, but I also like to give them the erg and tell them to turn it off and just follow the workout because of the pedaling, right? My girlfriend, who I don't coach, is really good at riding ergometer workouts, but is not very good at pedaling, right? She can grind out the 180 watts for 20 minutes. But if I take her off the ergometer, she struggles a little bit. And that carries over to athletes, right? Maybe the fast twitch guys are a little more stomp and coast, and the endurance guys are a little more like steady state. And so I want to bridge that gap wherever their limitation is. That's where I want to bridge the gap for them. So I find them super useful, and it's handy to have that visual. And a lot of my athletes that don't ride indoors will use the ergometer as a reference outdoors or the file. But I'm kind of on the fence of I wouldn't use them 100% for anybody. Or say, oh, this is do this and you're going to be fine just because of the pedaling and the biomechanics.
100% agree with that. Yeah, I don't want everybody. I don't want someone doing all of their workouts on that because also it takes that mental load
Right.
out, and I think that mental aspect is huge. Of like you have to motivate your legs to put out the power is very different than like there's this amount of resistance. You just have to keep pushing and keep the little, like you just have to keep pushing. Um, because when you're out there competing, unless you are competing indoors or whatnot, but if you're competing outside, you have to be the one that decides to put that level of effort down into the pedal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
so
And learn to do it. Nice.
yeah,
So I promised I wouldn't keep you guys too long, and we're coming up on about 45 minutes. So we're going to take that ergometer file and we're going to jump to what is, I hope, becomes a standard on these podcasts. I guess I'm a podcaster now. I want you guys to tell me your favorite, one or two of your favorite workouts, and it can't be something that's formulaic, right? I love 2x20s. Come on now. You guys are smarter than that. So I'm going to start off with my favorite workout that I came up with on my bike one day because it just sounded fun and it's been super effective. And I call them FTP coast downs. And what that is on your head unit, you click an interval and you do 3 minutes at your FTP, right? I'm going to use 300 because I can do the math in my head pretty much. So 3 minutes at FTP, and then you're going to coast and or soft pedal until you drop 10 watts on average power. So you get to 290. And then you're going to sprint it back up to 300. And as soon as you get to that 300 mark, you're going to coast it down again. So the coast versus pressure gives the athlete a little bit of manageability in the thing. I can keep a little bit of leg pressure on and have my coast down be slower, or I can zero pedal and have it drop right away. And then we got to sprint it back to 300. And then we're going to coast. And then we're going to sprint it back. And each time the sprint segment gets a little bit longer. And so if they can survive the 3 minute start and 5, 6, 8 minutes of off ons, that's a really great workout, especially for crit riders and for that race, that race acceleration thing. I found it to be personally brutal. And every one of my riders I've given it to, and I don't know, 50 riders, generally they like it. Almost nobody comes back and is like, I hate that workout. Because it's hard, it's self-limiting in that as soon as you hit that, I can't do anymore, you're done. Take a rest and maybe repeat 2 or 3 times. So that's my golden ticket to stardom is the FTP coast down. What about it, Scott? What's your gold ticket for me? I need some workouts, buddy.
So this would not, if you could only do one workout the rest of your life, this is not what I would give you, but it is my favorite to give, which is 30
Okay.
30s. 30 on, 30
Oh,
off. Depends a little bit on who you are, but broadly speaking, I'm going to go at about 150% of FTP for my ons and about 50% for my offs. And you're just going 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And it is so easy for the first 5 minutes. And I usually do 10 to 12 minutes a set, two or
okay,
three
nice.
sets, depending on who you are. And you get through and you're like, I'm Superman. This is so easy. And then it's just those last few in each one where all of a sudden you're like, wait, hold on a second. 30 seconds was an infinite rest at the beginning. Now 30 seconds is not a rest at all. And I just like workouts like that sort of like trick you into building up. And then
Nice.
by the end, you're all of a sudden like, I didn't realize this was going to be hard. And what is happening to me right now?
Yeah,
That's my
that 10 or
favorite.
12 minutes, that sounds like horribly brutal. And I may have to co-opt that a little bit. And I'll give due credit, Scott, although I've heard of 30 30s before, but your explanation is great. Okay, John, what's our secret workout for the week?
Oh, it's so formulaic. I'm so sorry, but it is my favorite,
That's
is
okay.
4x4. Um, and it's like got this whole new buzz around it now, which I can't even figure out what the hell they're talking about half the time, right? It's like what, the Norwegians are doing what? Like I don't even get that all the time. But I'll tell you why I like 4x4. And I would say if we were really drilling down, like try to get them at 90% VO2 utilization, et cetera, et cetera. But I like that workout because you can coach all kinds of levels of people that depending on how much tech they have, right? So I use it with people where we could talk about, utilization and blah, 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 and really drill down into the power numbers. I also use it with my team a lot. And we have a great 4 minute gravel hill that we go on that there's just a couple people that walk on it. So we can ride out there. We can do 4 minutes up it. There's a water tank at the top, works out just about perfectly. There's a little space to spin around up there, ride back down, hopefully not hit the other kids riding up, and then turn around at the bottom. It's just about a 4 minute recovery and do it again. And so you can just be like, we're just going to go out and do 4 tankerbles, right? And so you can frame it like that.
Tankables. I love it.
Workouts like that are great, right? Just to kind of make it really hands-on and really like, hey, I don't really have anything, but I'm going to go out and rip 4 times up that hill to the water tank, and you'll quickly learn some pacing, right? If we we all know
And
that.
do you have a
Yeah,
set? Do you have a set? So you're doing 4x4s. Is it just one block of 4x4s and that's it? Or do you
yeah,
do,
just one
yeah,
block of 4x4s.
so
Yeah,
16
yeah,
minutes of
and
on
usually
roughly
usually the recovery will be on four
about the
minutes.
1 to 1? Yeah. What about you,
Yeah,
Scott? Do you have
about a
a
1 to 1.
1 or 2 rounds of your horrible plan?
For my 30
Yeah,
30s,
30
you're saying?
30s. Yeah, like you
Typically
said,
people are
it's like
doing
10
two
minutes or
sets.
so. Two
My
sets of about
most common is 2 sets of 10 minutes.
nice,
Some people
nice.
might do 2 sets of 12 minutes. Some people might do 3 sets of 10, depending on, your physiology and how experienced you are. But if I had to shoot right down the middle, 2 sets of 10 minutes.
So we've kind of reached the end point of this conversation. I really would love to do it again because, as you guys know, I'm sort of a techno nerd. So I'm immediately, you guys say both those things, and I'm wanting to dive down the rabbit hole of workout construction and like, the intended physiology and all this stuff. So maybe we can tackle that next time. But any final thoughts before we let these people get back to their lives? By the way, please put in if you have a website or an email you want to shout out. I'm sure we'll have tens of listeners. And who knows, maybe someone is looking for a great coach and you guys fit the bill. So final thoughts, guys.
I want to hear more from Johnny in the future about. I know he does a lot of work with like aerodynamics
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
all of the tools that we now have that mean you don't have to be in a wind tunnel. I am way behind the times on all of that, and I would love to hear more from Johnny about that in the future.
Yeah, I've got some good insights for that too from one of my teammates. So yeah, I think we might have a topic for our next one. John, final thought. Oh, Scott, tell me your website and how people can find you if they're interested.
ScottColeCoaching.com. Scott at Scott Cole Coaching. Very
Tricky,
easy, not
tricky.
original.
John Cheetham.
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking about how wonderful it is. I mean, we've all known each other for at least 2 decades. and done so many projects together and so many things. And this is just so much fun to do this. And yeah, uh, future stuff. I want to hear more. I want to hear more about how you are both kind of navigating your lives. So
Well,
I don't know. I'm like, there's some
that's a
busy
podcast for each of
dudes.
us. Yeah, especially with a
Yeah.
semi new dad and managing all that. And you and I, John, we're a bit older than young Scott. At the same time, right? I'm in a coaching wise. I feel like I have such a great foundation, but I feel like I'm in a different place. Personally, I'm in a complete like random lifestyle. Like I don't even have a house at the moment. I'm trying to stay with friends or my girlfriend or travel. So that'll be another one. But yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's just so fun. I'm sitting here and getting goosebumps just because I love you guys, and I just think that this format, even just if we get zero play out of this, just the chance to talk to each other and kind of bounce ideas around. That's why I love our little cohort of riders, our coaches, and I can't wait to get Dan and Larry involved too. So maybe next time we'll get 5 on the podcast and
I
go
would
from
say if
there.
you're a cycling coach out there and you are new to coaching or you've been doing it for decades, like exactly what you're saying, Matt, like having this little cohort has been transformative for me in my coaching and us not feeling like we're on islands of coaches that we're competing with other people or competing for the same athletes. I think our little group was unique early on in starting to realize that we are actually colleagues. And sometimes we even passed athletes between each other. Johnny coached me for a while back in the day.
I'm thinking
Um,
about it because he's a good coach, and I
yeah,
could use it.
and like it's just amazing being able to have a group of other coaches where we actually see each other as colleagues like this. So
Well,
I'm very thankful for it.
I'm gonna jump that a little bit and say if there's coaches listening and you guys want, please reach out because we love the conversation and we're competitive guys, but we're not competitive with other coaches. There's lots of athletes around. And we just love the game and would love to talk to you. If you're a coach or an athlete and you just want to have a chat, please. Last thing, John, give me some info so people can reach you so they can get ahead of that John Cheetham methodology.
Tempoendurance.com. It's not hard to find me. You type that in, you'll reach me.
Easy
Um,
enough. Easy
yeah,
enough.
and I got a little
Guys,
newsletter too.
Sign
oh,
up
So
for his
cool.
newsletter.
I better sign up for
yeah,
your newsletter. I don't even get that.
yes.
It's good.
Listen, thank you guys so much. I think we kept it a reasonable length. Like we're about 45, 50 minutes in, so no one's going to fall asleep, hopefully. I really appreciate the time and I'd love to do it again. And thank you so much, guys. It really means a lot.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt. It's been
you.
great.
Yeah, thank you
Great.
so much. Awesome. Great
Cool.
to see you both.
All right. We're going to hit stop on recording. Talk to you guys soon.